So here we are for round 12 of Grand Prix Austin. On the left of your screen is Mr. Matthew Becker. There you see him getting ready for an interesting examination of his drafting skills against Mr. Tom Martell. Team Channel Fireball. Over his shoulder you see Mr. Brian David Marshall. I can tell you that after the match we're hoping to get Tom into the booth to talk to him about the deck and about forcing it and about where you can make your picks and how often you can expect things to table, all that kind of good stuff. It's just a tremendous archetype, and we'll see what we can come up with. Matthew Becker on the left looks like he's going to mulligan down to 6.
I'm interested to hear when Brian talks to him after the fact, whether Tom went into the draft intending to draft it, or whether it just kind of put together for him. One of the other players that was on our radar with the deck was Matt Ferrando, who, upon speaking with him a little bit, he went in expecting to force that deck, which I just like to see, because considering how overdrafted it's been, how people tend to shy away from it, it is really easy for you to at some point just flip the switch and say, you know what, this is I think I can do this. This is open.
It's always difficult when something, it goes from one person knowing it, and then a few people, and then all the people in the know it and do it, and all the people who aren't in the know get beaten by it. Then the people who are in the know, who have now beaten all the people who weren't in the know, write about it. So then all the people who not only were not in the know but who didn't play Magic online, then they know about it, but then they go online to try and play it because it's such a cool thing. So suddenly you've got this new loop again, and then at this level you've got everyone in the room knows about it, so you can't rely on the pick orders that you used to have when nobody knew about it. But therefore, if everyone avoids it, it's just there exactly like it used to be.
You guys may not know this. We've got a flow chart of everything that Rich just said here with us. So we start off with the incredibly powerful Mulch for Tom Martell. That's one of those cards that, in a graveyard-based set, just does double duty. It gets you the lands that you need, and even if it doesn't hit the lands, it's filling up your graveyard with cards that, if you're playing Mulch, are going to be incredibly useful. For him, he managed to hit 3 lands, including a Swamp, which is going to, at some point, fuel that Spider spawning flashback. It looks like he's got a 7th Bloodlines in his hand, too, so... The things his deck is going to be capable of doing, that seems like an exceptionally strong silver bullet kind of card for the deck to be playing.
So he's forced to discard a forest because he got up to 8 cards in hand.
Heaven forbid.
And an Ashmouth Hound, which is unlikely to be seeing much getting blocked or block action.
Yes. We've seen a lot of that card in the past 2 days. Oh, speaking of things that can and cannot block, the Grave Bramble.
Indeed. And that's a proper roadblock as well. It's a nice, big, chunky 4 toughness. Perfect turn for it as well.
Very good at stopping 2/1s that ping for an extra 1.
There's Lantern Spirit for Matthew Becker, so that can fly over the top and start an assault on Martell's life.
Is that a Silent Departure, I believe, hiding out in Martell's hand as well? The far left, I believe.
It's pretty good.
Yep. Let's see. Oh, wow. And in the perfect answer, I believe that's a One-Eyed Scarecrow that's going to... His deck, if that is what I think it is, his deck has gotten a lot of solid defensive options to keep him alive while he puts things together, it seems.
That's a lot of good support.
Yeah, or at least 2 solid defensive options.
Yeah.
Looks like that's going to be 3 mana for the One-Eyed Scarecrow. And yet again, it's a foil. Again, wonderful to see on day 2 of a Grand Prix. It's a Traveler's Amulet in his hand. There's Tom Martell. Had a nice surge in his solid finishes over the past year or two. I believe the first real solid large break that we had was Grand Prix Columbus a couple of years ago in the Legacy format.
And then Pro Tour Paris, of course, was
right
the big one.
Yeah. Man has been playing hard.
3.5 hours it took Ben Stark in the mirror to finally dispatch. That looks like Demon Male Horbuck. So that is going to shorten things considerably. Matthew's worked out that his Ashmouth Hound is doing very, very little, whereas a Lantern Spirit with +4/+2 can be doing quite a lot of powerful stuff.
1/4 of Martell's life a turn, thanks to that Scarecrow. But at the same time, it's an investment that is not going to pay off incredibly well when the bloodlines are severed. Even something as simple as a
Boom.
bounce spell prevents him from being able to re-equip that Demon Mail Hover.
Yeah.
That's the thing about that card. It requires such a large commitment, and against an opponent who's playing black and blue, ways to remove creatures pretty strongly.
It is super clunky.
Yes.
But then, I mean, you play it main, you don't know that Tom's going to be playing that,
True.
and against what he clearly is playing, that seems a perfectly reasonable game one option from Becker.
Yeah.
Just didn't work out.
Yep. Let's see. Is that a Moorland Haunt up there? No, you don't. Steady supply of creatures there. Anytime you're playing white, that makes me curious as to whether his splash is the blue or splash is the white. Although with the Lantern Spirit, playing the game costs 1 blue. I'll give you one guess.
Oh, is it Baneslayer Angel?
I don't know. We'll have to wait up. Sadly, no.
Delver of Secrets.
Delver of Secrets.
Okay.
So,
Was I far wrong?
No, you were. I mean, they both fly at some point.
There we go.
Yeah.
That was close.
And the Traveler's Amulet makes its way. Looks like he's got a Memory's Journey and a Silent Departure as the last 2 cards in his hand.
So we get an Exile, and there goes a fly. It'll be a 0/1. Oh joy.
At least until it becomes a 4/3.
Indeed.
All it takes is another creature.
Yes, not one yet though.
No, sir. Well, it appears that the Delver of Secrets is going to stay secretive.
Looked for a secret, couldn't find any.
No.
Traveler's Amulet goes away.
This is going to give Martell his 7th land.
Yeah, and 7 is kind of the magic number, isn't it, in this deck?
Especially considering, in addition to just, the namesake of the deck, he has 7 Bloodline, costs 7 to flashback. There's so many cards that cost 7.
One presumes he has Forbidden Alchemy somewhere in there. We've not seen any yet.
And the land tax law comes into effect whenever you search lands out of your deck. Clearly the top card of your deck has to be another land.
I didn't know that was one of the fundamentals of the universe.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Yeah, it's like the 4th law of thermodynamics. Well, let's see. I mean, at this point, Tom's got an amazing defense set up, and Becker is not really pressing with anything. But then again, Tom's deck, it's just going to win in a fell swoop at some point, it seems. Like, he could take the Aberration the distance.
That's Gallows Warden.
Yep.
3/3. So he does now have the ability to make Gallows Warden very, very big.
Yes.
But, again, he already can see in the graveyard that Sever's there. And
Yep. But at some point, you have to make him use it.
Yeah.
But it's also unfortunate that's a chapel instead of battlefield, yes, because that would negate the Scarecrow and allow him to begin attacking.
Yeah, Battleground.
Battleground, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, the Delver of Secrets is going to stay a lowly scientist for another turn. We spoke about that card earlier and how it doesn't seem to get an opportunity to flip all that frequently in Limited, but this seems like a perfect deck that's going to rely heavily on spells and less so on creatures for it to see a 3/2. You see Tom Martell right there, considering his options carefully. That's one of the things you have to consider with this deck, is there are a large number of options every single turn.
There are lines, aren't there? So we're going to see Sever without the DML Hallwalk. He's not going to force Becker to sacrifice the token to equip. He's just going to go, let's make it dead.
I suppose, without much else to do, It can't hurt. Plus, I'm assuming at some point he's going to force him to sacrifice and then use that silent departure to return something that is worse for him. He'd like to get that out of the way for when he does flip. And, oh, man.
Reveals Forbidden Alchemy. Flip.
Here goes Jeff Goldblum into attack.
206, Scott Peters.
And silent departure your token.
Flat removal spell.
Actually, just hit.
I would say some non-spider damage, but does an insectile aberration count close enough?
Yeah, it's kind of there, isn't it? So we're going to see the top 4, and if there's a spider spawning there, things are going to be very unfriendly very soon.
Looks like a mulch. I didn't see what it was that he took.
Might be a deranged assistant.
That it is, yes.
Again, another card that's not particularly exciting anywhere else, but absolutely fine right here.
Make a mana, draw a card is effectively what that card reads, or at least draw a portion of a card.
Sure. And Becker just sitting back with apparently nothing to do at all.
No.
He's got several cards in hand.
I wonder if the lack of a second colored source for either of his colors seems to be inhibiting him.
Maybe for blue. He doesn't look like he's got any white cards in hand right now.
Is that another lantern?
5 cards.
Alright.
For an invisible stalker.
Well, that card seems to be pretty nice when it's wearing a Demon Male Halbrook.
Yep. Actually, Invisible Stalker is pretty nice when it's wearing just about anything.
That's very, very true. Although, there are cards, man. I love how innocuous that card was and how it turned into a quick, like, first, second pick, build around me card.
Yeah.
Like, once people realized the power that it had. Shroud is just like Temblor. Like, Rolling Temblor can deal with it. You can get rid of it with the
Tribute to Hunger.
That's it, yes.
I think that's the one card in the set that some of the pros would have preferred not to have been printed.
Why do you say that?
It's the Invisible Stalker's the deck where you go turn 1 Silver Inlay Dagger, turn 2 Invisible Stalker, turn 3 Equip, and it doesn't matter how good you are, often you're going to just lose to that. It's the Puncher's Chance deck.
I understand that. It makes perfect sense.
And truthfully, there isn't a lot of play skill in going Silver Inlay Dagger, Invisible Stalker, Equip, Hit.
I can't argue with that fact.
I mean, obviously, I'm very proud if I ever manage it.
But then again, when you do, it's all skill.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Alright. Oh, that's right. It wasn't a silent departure. That explains why. That was a dream
Twist?
Twist, yes.
So, Deranged Assistant.
That is a large, large graveyard.
In comes the... Oh. Thinking about it. I'm going to see a little bit more action first in the graveyard. Yeah, it's going to be another Dream Twist. More checklist action hitting the graveyard. Checklist cards, the commentator's friend.
They are. They're so much fun. It's a game. Wow. Yeah, that is a mess. I mean, he's got to have like a dozen cards left in his deck.
Yeah.
And still no spider spawning in his graveyard, it looks like. Unless... Oh, there. It's so hard to tell. Did I see it in there? I thought I might have. Again, like the things that this deck is capable of, he's just... It's true he hasn't been put in a whole lot of pressure this game. He actually lost his last round to the green-white deck that he passed, as he put it, because when he's putting this together, like green-white is just one of those decks. You give him a couple of travel preparations, and we saw the power that it was capable of in the previous round with Melissa DeTorres, the game that she took from...
Yeah, I was watching that off stage and thought, such a good card.
Yeah. Man, that's another one of those cards that I mean, I remember when the Symbiosis saga.
Yeah, wow.
It's an incredibly powerful card that just sneaks up on you in fast formats like that. It just will get you.
Yeah, and Becker says, yeah, okay, thank you so much.
Try this
so
again.
What you didn't see there, boys and girls at home, if you've not seen it before, is spider spawning. It was implied, and it was known that it was there. But spider spawning, you get to put a 1/2 green spider creature token with reach onto the battlefield for each creature card in your graveyard. So, I don't know, how many did Tom get into his graveyard there? You're looking at half a dozen, and that's generally round about where you are. One of the not weaknesses precisely to the deck, but sometimes when you're building it as an archetype, there are so many spells that you're kind of obliged to take the enablers. You need your Gnaw to the Bone. You need you want the Runic Repetition. You want Memory's Journey if you can get it. And you want all your Forbidden Alchemies, and you want Dream Twist, and so on.
Yes.
You can find yourself a little light on creatures, and sometimes the deck is something like 13 spells and only 10 creatures, because you know that you're not really relying on any of the creatures to win you the game, because you've got Spider Spawning to win you the game. But it does mean that sometimes there's a little kind of tension. Plus also, another level of tension is with the Scarb cards, because you'll play Armoured Scarb, that's fine to put 4 into the graveyard.
Yes.
But also sometimes you'll find yourself playing things like Makeshift Mauler to take things out. You'll find yourself playing some of the other Scarb creatures that take exile things out of your graveyard. And suddenly you find that Gnaw to the Bone, yes, it's still really good, but it's kind of gaining you 6 life. And sometimes that's the hole in the deck where the aggro, like you say, he lost to the green-white the previous round,
yes,
can drive a little hole through the deck.
Though I do think also one thing that you try to generally avoid, like the Makeshift Maulers, while there are obviously a very good card, Stitch Drake is a very good card, it's entirely possible that when you're drafting this spider spawning deck, you just eschew cards like that. Like they don't, like, when you're drafting this deck, you have a clear plan on what you want to do, and you want to set up your defense and string together, the various, the web of spells that you've got to put together. And so cards like Armored Scob are really in the deck. We talked a little bit about Typhoid Rats earlier as well as being another card that fills the blank in really well. I mean, if you looked at last game, like some of the creatures that he had, like he had Delver's Secrets, which is really good in a heavy spell deck, and also can get there and poke through for a lot. Plus, he's not too terribly upset if it gets milled off and goes to the graveyard. He's got Grave Bramble, which is just a phenomenal defender against the aggressive decks. He had the Scarecrow. Like, all of the creatures in his deck fill roles that are suited to complement the other cards that his deck is drafting.
Very good.
Another thing we didn't see for that last game was a good part of his opponent's deck. Like, we found ourselves staring down. I mean, I'm not sure. It started to come together towards the end there, but
a Lonely Demon Male Horbuck.
Yeah, and it's also possible. I mean, the deck could be built around Invisible Stalker, and without the namesake card, he did mulligan that game. Yes. Yes. So it's possible he was mulliganing towards that card and got to a hand that he just couldn't get rid of. So, and that's one of the things. Like, you can do that. It's funny, we were doing a draft after everything in San Francisco. We had a conversation about the deck, the Invisible Stalker deck, with Randy Bueller. Who drafted it, and he said, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I would just mulligan to Invisible Stalker. Like, at least you don't want to go too low, but if your opening hand doesn't have it and it's the deck you're drafting, like, you need to go find it, exactly." Which ultimately ties back into the mulligan conversation you guys had with Martin yesterday.
That's right. Yeah, it was some very interesting things came out of yesterday. I was surprised at how much we were able to find out and share and impart and learn. It was a really, really good day at the office yesterday. Quite apart from some really fun Magic and some great games. But I think we probably all went away a little smarter at the end of yesterday.
I agree. It's days like that I really enjoy. If I'm not mistaken, this is going to be an Invisible Stalker on turn 2. Did I catch that wrong? I did catch that
right. Ashmouth Hound.
It's hard to tell with this flipping cards.
So that's going to be Dream Twist. Several Bloodline goes into the graveyard.
Is that our spider spawning as well underneath it?
Looks like it might be. Second card down.
Yeah. He's got a Forbidden Alchemy in his hand. I think I might have seen a Mulch hiding in there as well.
So Martell passes.
Right.
Becker turn 3 will actually get to hit.
Take that.
A very fine band.
Yes. Oh, and it was the Invisible Stalker. I was right.
So I guess he just feels he has the chance to hit for 2
Yes.
on turn 3, and every turn counts.
Yep. Doesn't look to have... can't see past the... I think he's got 3 lands in his hand and a 4th mystery card. And an armored scab that he just grabbed as well.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to attack, and yes, I'll take 3.
Here comes the scab.
Martell's like, that should be in my deck. Four.
And what goodies do we find here? Ghostly Wing?
Oh, it's like a spectral flight.
Is that a
Up at the
Ditch
top?
Drake?
Yeah, that is Stitch Drake, top of the...
Yeah.
there's spectral flight. Getting one of those cards that basically... No one really wants that as a card, except if you've got Invisible Stalker, when people want that all the time.
Exactly. I was just thinking that. Martell is going hunting for some more cards. Definitely needs to start stemming the tide. It's going to be difficult for him to deal with that Invisible Stalker. Again, I don't know if he's going to be able to deal with that Invisible Stalker, so the closer his life ticks to 0, the more the inevitability actually swings to Becker's side.
Martell will lay his 3rd color.
This is going to be a... Yes, it is.
No.
Foil Mulch. I believe he's playing 2 copies of Mulch. There's a...
4 spells. They're all going to hit the graveyard.
And that's going to...
And as you can clearly see on the table, even if you don't know much about Magic, you can just see that on the right, there is no defense.
Which is the exact opposite of what he needs in his first couple of turns.
Yeah. And the exact opposite of what happened in Game 1, where every conceivable mode of defense was right there.
Yeah, so we know his deck has it. It just hasn't provided it. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Wouldn't surprise me if that's One-Eyed Scarecrow.
Yeah,
Looks like it might be.
I agree with that.
One of the interesting things about this limited format, I think back to Lorwyn, and one of the great successes of that block was that when you drafted, there were so many cards, because of the tribal mechanic, there were so many cards that were extremely powerful for 1 or arguably 2 of the players at the table, and essentially completely worthless to the other 6.
Yes.
Or 7. And it feels to me like this is a lot like that in the sense of Spectral Flight. No one plays Spectral Flight. But you play Invisible Stalker, and you're like, thank you very much, I have that.
Yeah.
And you look at the Naught to the Bone deck with all these cards that don't do too much. There is Spider
We are going to
spawning,
spawn some spiders.
and we are going to get 5. They're all 1/2 with reach.
I think
As Martell just confirms, yeah, here are all my creatures in my yard.
there are, in addition to what you are saying about those cards, the other cards are part of what makes it awesome, because those cards are, like, they're almost modal. Like, they work really, really well if you're going for a particular deck, but if it turns out the deck's not available, the cards aren't dead. You can just switch them and move into another deck.
Yep.
You find the same thing when you've got the dual classes and races in Lorwyn. Like, sometimes you'd be drafting the Giant deck, but then Giants aren't available. Hey, I've got a bunch of these Warriors now. Maybe I could switch into Warriors instead.
Yes, absolutely.
You find the same kind of things happening with this format here.
And it's a way that you get to evaluate a card as a 10 if you're playing Giants.
Yes.
And it's still a 7 if you're Warrior. And it's a 1 or even a 0 if you're playing neither.
Yes.
And that's what's great, because one of the sort of straightforward things when you play like a core set draft is that, a lightning bolt. Mm-hmm. Well, pretty much any archetype in any pair of colours, it's a 9 or a 10. Because why wouldn't you play 2 mountains for a lightning bolt in your green-white deck? So you're never going to see Lightning Bolt's 6th pick. And that's where drafts get interesting. When you're past the first few, here's a 5/5 flyer, here's a 4/4 flyer, here's my classic removal spell. Now here are these interesting little cards that can be okay. Like BDM yesterday was talking about the ghouls and the zombies, the 2/2 in black.
Yeah.
You know, the walking corpse.
Runic repetition.
Uh-huh.
What's making a repeat performance? Well, I guess there was only one target, wasn't there? He had Dream Twist.
Yeah, because the spawning is...
Still hanging out. I mean, that Runic Repetition, that's one of those cards that... I see that card 13th, 14th all the time. And here in this deck, it's not essential, but it's pretty close. Like, it's a part of the long game, end game engine. All that talk about not having defense has been shored up by the quick appearance of 5 1/2 reached creatures.
There's Moon Heron.
Moon Heron.
You can't do that. It's in the contract. You're not allowed to sing. Well, it's in my contract. I'm not allowed to sing. I don't know about yours.
I'm only allowed to sing when you're around. And I'm only allowed to sing those exact 2 words.
Moon Heron.
Rashad's staring at me. Oh, yeah.
Perhaps that's editorial policy just coming along the table.
Yeah. I do love the little Easter eggs that are hidden that get explained, like in card art and in the storylines, like the heron and the moon from like Avacyn, like the.
You're going to have to explain that to me.
Yeah. So if you look at the moon from Innistrad, it's actually like how we get the man in the moon, which I mean can be seen one of a million different ways. I think each culture's got their own little view of it, but the moon in Innistrad has got a heron, which is the symbol of Avacyn, and so it's just kind of and you can look really close, especially in the artwork for a moon heron, and see it in the background. It's there in every single moon that exists on any card art. You just have to look closer.
Wow. Maybe everyone at home already knew that. I didn't. I think that's tremendous.
Yeah, little things like that are just phenomenal to me. All right, well, Martell is going to put himself considerably out of harm's way.
Some life. La, 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 la. Gnaw to the bone. Sound effects optional.
I do love how gnaw to the bone doesn't actually get rid of those creatures. You're gnawing them to the bone, but
the bones are still there.
Yeah.
Ready to be reanimated at a moment's notice. Yeah. Should you feel the urge.
The real question is, can you gnaw to the bone and then gnaw to the bone again? Does that make any sense?
Well, apparently you can. Falcon Wrath Noble for Martell.
It seems incredibly strong in a deck built on tokens.
And now, he's going to turn his little green men sideways.
Why not? You just gained 24 life.
Yep.
Judges will be over momentarily.
I mean, it's at this point that things have developed a sort of grinding inevitability on Martell's side. The life gain has just pushed him so far up.
One point, though, that's worth bearing in mind at this point, because you can argue that the game is all but lost on one level for Becker. A card like Rolling Tembler
That's what I was just thinking.
is a card that you don't have to pick very highly, because very few people want it highly. And it's not even something you would necessarily main deck. But a lot of the most successful drafters and sealed players are those who are aware of their sideboard. And particularly for drafting, you see it time and time again. Just little cards like the Land Destruction spell that gains you 4 life.
Graveyard Shovel.
Right? You know, Graveyard Shovel. I mean, you know, who wants that? But in a pinch, Curse of Oblivion.
Yes.
You come out as just this really clunky way to help start dealing with a graveyard. No one wants it early, but pick it up 8th and 10th rather than a card that you're probably going to cut anyway, and that can really improve your limited game.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. And there are a lot of those little cards here in the format, like ways to combat graveyard decks, ways to combat flyers, ways to combat little men that aren't necessarily going to see main deck play, but you get them like, 9th, 10th pick, and as long as you're getting those first 8 picks fairly quality, you're going to have your second deck built and have 3 or 4 solid sideboard cards for whatever may show up.
So Becker is certainly putting up more of a show this time round. He's Lantern Spirit.
Certainly. I mean, despite the fact that he is facing this down, I mean, his game is by no means over.
No.
He still has a massive number of creatures, and the amount of Martell's life that is going away at every turn is just going to continually increase. So, and I mean, he did remove his Gnaw from the Bone. That was a flashback spell.
Yeah.
So, I think that's why I like so much about this spider spawning deck is the fact that it's able to set up, like it's able to go from 0 to 60 in any direction in one turn. Like it goes from no defense to abortive defense. It's able to go from no offense to abortive offense. It's able to go from almost dead to an insurmountable life total. No cards in deck to the exact cards that I want left in my library. It's just it is a deck of extremes. Definitely a flashy deck, and I dig flashy draft decks.
Yeah, and it's also a deck that, for all its unfairness, and I mean that with a capital U, which is a good thing, it also has just enough vulnerability to, like you say, Gnaw to the Bone. If you'd done it first, then flash back, when you get to do it twice, and Runic Repetition it back, and then it's utterly foolish.
Yeah.
But sometimes you draft this archetype, you have one Gnaw to the Bone, it goes to the graveyard, you don't get to cast it straight the first time, so you only get to cast it once, you're missing some of the parts, you have to use Runic Repetition on something else, and suddenly you find, yes, I went up to 38. But turns out that I'm being hit for 5 a turn, and it gets interesting again. They're really good games to watch. They're not just, oh yeah, I'm afraid I drafted Spider Spawning, you're dead.
Yeah.
Even now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 guys.
I mean, you saw the look on Becker's face there a second ago as he was pondering what his attacks are going to be. I mean, he knows the situation, the spot that he's in.
Yeah.
With Martell at 40, the whole point was to drop Martell low enough that he could just poke at him for a couple of turns with that Invisible Stalker, but at this point, he's got no choice but to try to deal with what he can and make sure that not enough damage bleeds over.
All in all, it's looking like a pretty thoroughly efficient 2-0 to the Spiders.
I would say
which
so.
on one level, being entirely neutral, is what we want, because we get to have Tom come in and talk about the deck, having seen it on camera in action. So,
just as we refer to the bubble matches as win and ends, Brian David Marshall was referring to this match for Tom Martell as a win and end to the booth. So.
yes.
Sorry, Tom, but if you lose, we can't talk to you. I love it still hiding out on the far side of the board, something that has had no impact other than to be a blocker for this game. It's that little one-eyed scarecrow.
Delver meets Claustrophobia.
Similar Scholar.
Lantern.
Getcha.
Ping.
Got to keep that damage going. Got to win somehow, right? You don't want to end the game with Martell at 1 point and then get attacked.
Under 40. I'm under 40 for another 3 days. The big 4-0, still alive, and still know next to nothing about Magic. Going well.
I don't know about that. I mean, it's funny that a guy who's about to hit the big 4-0 is such a modern aficionado.
Yeah, I love Modern. I really, really do.
It's funny, we were talking about Grand Prix Lincoln earlier and trying to figure out what the format was, and like we were talking about how Standard is going to get, give it a push with Standard to us right now. Then we looked up the format, decided it was Modern. I'm like, oh man,
yeah,
got me kind of excited too.
You can play anything in Modern and
really
beat
can.
people.
We spent most of the draft day of Worlds trying to figure out a way to break Heartless Summoning because we're bored and we knew the Modern was coming up, so came up with some pretty good ideas, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Don't tell them.
Oh, no. That's proprietary information. Remember, if you don't play with us, you don't put in the time, you don't get the secrets.
Oh, boy.
But then again, no one wants to play with us or put in time with us because our secrets are not very good.
So 8 Spiders remain. Up against Lantern Spirit, Ashmouth Hound, the Armoured Scar, the Sideways Invisible Stalker, Moon Heron, and just peeking out at the top of your screen, One-Eyed Scarecrow.
Definitely seen Memory's Journey shuffle back in. A
silent departure for the Moon Heron.
Oh my goodness, at this stage in the game too.
And we're going to see a bit of flashback action for the One-Eyed Scarecrow. Then in comes the team.
Can block 3. Becker does not look terribly pleased with his prospects, and I can't say I blame him. This reminds me, this is the same kind of experience that you would have when you were facing down the Storm Empty the Warrens deck.
Oh, wow.
Power Limited.
That's another lovely deck.
Yeah.
Jeremy Neiman just missed out on the top 8 of Philadelphia in Modern with that deck.
We did a side draft early on in the format, or whenever I guess Grand Prix Jersey was, and it was like me, Cedric Phillips, and someone else, and I laid out my deck on the table afterwards. That was the deck that I drafted. It had like multiple spells and Trumpet Domains and Mind
Mind Shrieker with a lot of lands.
Yeah.
That's... Oh, dear.
They told me it was the worst pile of cards they'd seen. I'm like, trust me, like we've been drafting this deck for a while online past couple of weeks, and after attacking for a billion on turn 5, they got the hint.
It's going to be a makeshift mauler.
Unfortunately, what we need now is volume, not quality. And there's still no good answer to that. Mind Shrieker, like plus X is the real problem. If it was plus X plus O, then...
Yes, that's the fair version, the plus X plus O.
But then again, I guess you've got to protect your mana investment against cards like Geist Flame and stuff like that.
Yep. Tribute?
By all means, you choose. Well, found a good way to get rid of the Invisible Stalker.
Well, it's still on a 39-turn clock, so I guess that was fair enough.
Agreed.
So now 7 cards turn sideways. The Moon Heron is going to try and get extraordinarily lucky against the Mind Shrieker.
Becker's demeanor and like even his manners, he's just kind of like half-heartedly shoving stuff in the way. He knows how the game is going. It's unfortunate too because the game started out so well for him. It's got to be such again the game of a deck of extremes. Works for your opponent too. Your opponent feels incredibly solid, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he's just like hitting a brick wall. Fortunes can change in the blink of an eye.
Becker plays. One-Eyed Scarecrow comes back, passes the turn. He's at 2.
I expect to see a handshake in short order.
Momentarily.
Hey, look.
There it is. And Tom Martell takes it by 2-0 with Spider spawning.
I can only imagine the conversation that's about to go on when Brian David Marshall brings him into the booth to give him a little chat down about what we just saw.
Yeah.